Hey, everybody. Whoops. Hang on. Okay. Hopefully you guys can all hear me because I've now finally managed to plug my mic in. Sorry. Good morning. It's Elizabeth Cronus McLaughlin. It's Resistance Live for the 10th of October, 2019. I'm really tired. I was out late last night finally getting some adult grown-up time. And I'll give everybody a few seconds to log in. But let me just say, it's 9 o'clock in the morning Pacific, and today has already been a day. The breaking news is relentless and insane today. I mean, like, I'm just absolutely astonished by what's happened even so far this morning. Because there is an astounding amount of breaking news that that directly implicates the president's inner circles. So we have a number of these stories to talk about. And I want to make very clear that, this is a really strange set of circumstances that have happened that we just found out about this morning. And, there's a lot to talk about on the legal front with this, as well as from the political front. So while everybody's loading in, and I can see all of you now, hi, let's just get started. So here's what happened. Late last night, two Giuliani clients / associates, both of whom are Russian-born folks who are directly implicated in the Ukraine scandal, were arrested at Dulles Airport, fleeing the country. One of the things that you all should know is that both of them were expected to testify on the Hill this week. They were mentioned in the Giuliani, now infamous Comic Sans font letter as being his clients and associates. And he had said that they were not going to comply with requests to testify, but nonetheless, they were due to testify on the Hill. One of them today, one of them tomorrow. And they were picked up last night at Dulles Airport as they were about to board an international flight. So here's, and I'm laughing because, like, it's a good story. And there's also also some very strange things about this circumstance. Okay, so here's the deal. These two gentlemen have been implicated in the scandal related to Ukraine of trying to shut down the investigation into Paul Manafort. They've also now been arrested. What they've been arrested for now, I'm sorry. It's funny. I'm enjoying it. So, forgive me for laughing. What they've been arrested for now is campaign finance fraud, because apparently they routed $325,000 from a foreign company, entity, person into a pro-Trump super PAC. Some money was also provided apparently to the now ousted from office congressman from Texas, Pete Sessions, who's now also implicated in this. And apparently this investigation into Giuliani's associates has been ongoing for a very long time. And Bill Barr has known about this since February. Now, there was some suspicion this morning that part of what might have been happening here, this is as the news was breaking, was that Barr had picked these guys up so they couldn't testify on the Hill. It appears that that's not actually the case. It appears that they were fleeing the country, and the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Geoffrey Berman, had to make a very quick determination about whether or not to arrest them. It doesn't mean that it's not a little weird, by the way. I just want to make this very clear, that Bill Barr has known about this since February. And, I'm going to get to one other point related to this, which makes what's happening with the whistleblower even weirder. These guys are still getting arrested and investigated because Bill Barr is so corrupt, as we all know. The idea that some two associates affiliated with Rudy Giuliani, who also, by the way, are implicated in this weird gas deal that, we talked about with regard to Ukraine last week, where they were trying to find a way to funnel money out of the Ukraine aid scandal into the pockets of Giuliani's associates. That's these two guys. So there's layers of this arrest that are very strange. Now, let me say one thing, because this is also a little bit of weirdness with regard to Bill Barr that we all should just be aware of. you will all remember that at the time the whistleblower complaint was referred to the DOJ out of the Office of Inspector General, they referred it as a criminal referral, meaning that they sent it to the DOJ suggesting that a criminal prosecution should arise, fundamentally, a criminal investigation and possibly a prosecution should arise out of the whistleblower's complaint concerning the president's call to Ukraine and this whole, now we know, extended campaign to withhold from Ukraine aid in exchange for alleged or partial dirt on the Bidens or fabricated dirt on the Bidens. So here's what's really weird, okay, with regard to that. Bill Barr knows that there's an ongoing investigation into Parnas and this other fellow who's associated with Rudy Giuliani, these two dudes, Russian-born dudes directly implicated in Ukraine in like 3 different ways, in the Ukraine scandal in 3 different ways. He knows that this investigation is ongoing. Criminal referral comes over from the Office of Inspector General on the whistleblower complaint concerning Ukraine, and they drop it? They drop it, knowing that there's an ongoing investigation into 2 of these associates for related conduct concerning corruption, and Rudy Giuliani. When the whistleblower complaint references Rudy Giuliani's role in trying to get Ukraine to comply with the president's extortion. Odd. And, what I will say about it is that, the implication of that is that Barr will protect the president, but maybe not Rudy Giuliani, but definitely not Rudy Giuliani's associates. It's a little weird. So there's more to that story now than what we kind of know at this point. But it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And it's a little odd. I mean, I'm not going to deny it. It's a little odd that under Barr, these 2 guys have been arrested. However, I will say that I feel like the offset of this is literally that they were fleeing the country. They kind of, it apparently seems as though they kind of gave the DOJ no choice but to arrest them, because if they left, they're going to be gone. And the fact that they were fleeing literally the night before they were due to testify on the Hill, interesting, to say the least. All right, so here's what's happening next. At 2 p.m. Eastern, there's going to be a press conference by Geoffrey Berman. Stick a pin in Geoffrey Berman because we're coming back to him, who is currently the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York on these 2 arrests. By the way, there are 2 other people implicated in this. There's actually 4 people named in the indictment. We believe one of them was picked up in San Francisco last night. That was the latest reporting. But one of the allegations, actually 2 of the counts that are contained in this indictment are for conspiracy. For conspiracy. Now, there's already 4 people indicted, so they're all in the conspiracy, right? But you will all remember that one of the interesting things about conspiracy counts, and if you've been watching for a while, you've heard me talk about this, is that when you assent to the purpose of the conspiracy, one side of the conspiracy doesn't have to know what the other side of the conspiracy is doing, because the aim, the end goal is all the same. So my big question here is, what's going to happen to Rudy Giuliani? Because it seems quite likely at this point that there should be an indictment against Rudy Giuliani if there isn't already sealed somewhere. He's very plainly completely wrapped up in this. He was asked, by the way, this morning for a comment on this whole situation. A reporter asked him whether or not he expected that these 2 guys would flip. And he said, good luck. Didn't notably say, I'm innocent, there's nothing to flip on. Didn't noticeably say, these are false charges that will doubtless be dismissed. Said, good luck. Fascinating. Anyway, back to Geoffrey Berman. So while we're talking about Rudy Giuliani, and I think the next question that should be asked of Geoffrey Berman, by the way, at this press conference is, are you going to indict Rudy Giuliani? Because you should, But here's the other interesting bit about this, which some of you will recall. Many of you will remember that shortly into Trump's term, he cleaned house of all these old U.S. attorneys. The former U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, of course, is the inestimably awesome Preet Bharara. Well, Geoffrey Berman replaced Preet Bharara. He was nominated by Donald Trump to do that. Geoffrey Berman is Rudy Giuliani's ex-law partner. So there's another layer here that's really kind of funky, which is that Geoffrey Berman is now indicted 2 associates of his ex-law partner. If Rudy Giuliani is going to be indicted, Geoffrey Berman's going to have to recuse, because he might. Okay, so the other thing that you should be aware of, by the way, just to add like another layer of implication here, is this. The two gentlemen who were arrested at Dulles Airport last night, again, Lev Parnas, and I always forget the second guy's name. I think it's anyway, we'll find it. These two guys are now being represented by none other than, wait for it, John Dowd, who all of you will remember is the president's ex-lawyer. Okay, now, additional layers of interest here. In May, there's a photograph of this. These two associates of Rudy Giuliani had lunch with Don Jr. to talk about the 2020 Trump campaign. Mind you, they have now been arrested on campaign finance fraud and conspiracy related thereto. Is Don Jr. wrapped up in this? Who knows? Then also, we recently learned that in advance of this campaign to try to get Ukraine to shut down the investigations into Paul Manafort, these two fellows had dinner at the White House with the president. So, you know, again, layers and layers and layers and layers deep. This is a very big deal this morning, like a very, very big deal. Not to mention that from the layers that are being uncovered yet, there still may be additional issues with campaign finance fraud as to where the money that they got. You know, they claim now, the super PAC is claiming this morning, it's called America First, of course. The super PAC is claiming this morning that this $325,000 has been segregated off into an account and they're just sitting on it. They're not using it, right? I'm really curious about whether or not that's actually the case. So, you know, again, you have dinner or lunch, whatever it was, with Don Jr. to talk about the 2020 Trump campaign. You're running a pro-Trump super PAC. You've now been accused of campaign finance fraud from routing $325,000 from a foreign actor into this super PAC. And you're talking to Trump's son about the 2020 campaign. I mean, you know, like, who knows? Pascal? Kushner? The layers are very deep here. Very, very deep. And, you know, like, let's not forget, we already have one GOP congressman, former congressman now, but who was wrapped up in this in 2018. Took a donation from the super PAC that was directly funded, apparently, from illegal sources. So, you know, one of the things I said on Twitter this morning as this whole thing was breaking is that the GOP has got to understand that as this story and the layers of the corruption start to break, the party is going to be like destroyed. And the only way to stop that, if they care to, is to get on the train of impeachment, right? I mean, that's one of the things that they've got to start realizing. They may be realizing it this morning because, by the way, one of the other entities, one of the other congressmen who took money from this entity is Kevin McCarthy, who you all will recognize as the House Minority Leader. So there's just so many layers deep that are implicated by these two fellows who have been arrested in Rudy Giuliani and the super PAC. You know, it's going to be quite an interesting press conference at 2 o'clock. It's also going to be quite interesting to see what happens next here. It's bad. I mean, like, bad in a good way for us, but bad. Like, layers and layers and layers bad. All right. The other bit of breaking news last night is that Rex Tillerson has now admitted that the president asked him to do something illegal in 2017, no less, which, by the way, you know, raises all these questions of whether or not we'd even be here if he had actually reported it at the time. Apparently, much like the president asked Jim Comey to make the Flynn situation go away, you will remember that that was a part of Comey's testimony on the Hill. It was part of the Mueller report. Apparently, the president asked Rex Tillerson to get involved in trying to end the prosecution of another Giuliani associate, a gold trader, a Turkish gold trader who was being prosecuted by the DOJ. And Rex Tillerson apparently literally walked down the hall and went to Chief of Staff John Kelly at the time and said, he's asked me to do something illegal. I mean, at this point, the impeachable offenses, I just want you all to understand. I mean, like, I don't even know, keep track of all of them. Like, Google spreadsheets. I mean, if they're going to try to throw the whole kitchen sink at him, it's going to be like dozens and dozens of impeachable offenses at this standpoint. So, so that was the other bit of breaking news last night, which, by the way, in any other news cycle, again, I just want to let you all know, would take down a presidency. It's crazy. Like where we are right now is crazy. Today is crazy. All right. Other bits of breaking news in the last 24 hours that you should all be aware of. Yesterday, Senators Blumenthal and Kamala Harris did something very interesting. You will all remember that they sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee, which is currently chaired by Lindsey Graham. You will also remember that there's been some noise about Senate Judiciary pulling in people to testify, including, by the way, Rudy Giuliani. So yesterday, sorry, I am a little giddy. I'm a little punchy. I didn't sleep very much, but this is all quite fun. So yesterday, Blumenthal and Harris sent a letter to every single Trump cabinet member demanding their participation in impeachment proceedings. That in and of itself is very interesting because basically what they're doing is they're asking the cabinet officials to either put up or shut up. Because here's the deal. If those cabinet officials don't cooperate with subpoenas, they too can be impeached. So there was like a fiery shot across the bow from these two senators on the Senate Judiciary Committee last night to the cabinet of Donald Trump to basically say, you better get your shit together. And, you know, it's an interesting thing to consider. I'll just add in the context of the 25th Amendment, because all of you will remember, now we're getting to Pence in a minute, so hold on. All of you will remember that the way that the 25th Amendment is executed is that Pence plus a majority of what is presumed to be the cabinet, again, this clause has never been invoked in this way, so we don't know, but a certain percentage of the executive branch have to come forward and say the president is unfit to serve. So basically the warning that has been shot across the bow of the entire cabinet is you better cooperate or we're coming for you, whatever that cooperation may look like. It's a really interesting day. It's just a really interesting day. Now, yesterday was very dark. Don't get me wrong. Like yesterday was just a shitstorm, but that was a very good little bit of breaking news overnight. Okay. This morning, I just want to mention this because this is a really interesting development from a political strategy standpoint. The president went after Fox News on Twitter. He did it because Fox News released a poll showing that there are now a majority of Americans in favor of impeachment. President went nuts, said that the pollsters at Fox News suck. Oh, well, at least I'm the president. And it was quite the tweet. Okay. But the big takeaway from that, other than, as I said on Twitter, the completely erudite nature of our articulate president, is that he's now attacking Fox News. And that in and of itself, should tell you all how serious it's gotten. And, for all of our hatred of Fox News, I will say one thing. There has been more and more reporting on Fox, and this is very interesting from the standpoint of the Republicans as well as the general public, to the effect that the president's conduct is illegal. There are not just the usual, outlier Fox News reporters now, like Andrew Napolitano and Shep Smith, who have previously criticized the president. There's people on there now saying, no, actually, he's broken the law. It's not everybody, but it's happening. And so the fact that he's kind of out there now attacking Fox is a sign of where we find ourselves. Like he's alienating everybody now. It's really interesting. So, all right, Pence. So Pence was asked some questions yesterday. This is really fascinating about whether or not the conduct of the president with regard to Ukraine was something that he knew about. Meaning, before you went over and met with Zelensky, because you will all remember that Pence did that, right? Like the day after the phone call, that is the July 25th phone call, Pence goes over to Ukraine and sits down with Zelensky to convince him, basically, to do what the president wants. Here's the deal, though. Pence danced in front of the camera, and this was really interesting to watch. I retweeted it, by the way. You should have a look. He was asked repeatedly by an NBC reporter, were you aware that the president had conditioned aid on digging up dirt on the Bidens? Were you aware of that? And he didn't answer the question. So, here's the other thing I just want to say about this right now. I've said it over and over again. I'm going to say it again. We talked about it a little bit yesterday in the context of strategy. Pence is in this up to his neck. And a very astute conversation was had on Twitter last night about this, which I retweeted a chunk of as well. GOP decides that they would be better off running against President Pelosi, heading into 2020 than they are right now. That in and of itself would be a fascinating development. If the GOP finally reaches the point of realizing that strategically they might be able to score more points in 2020 if Pelosi is president, this whole thing is over. Over. So there's some very kind of curious considerations going on right now because, you know, Pence, as we know, is in this as deep as you can get. The president is throwing Pence under the bus. We talked about that yesterday, including in legal briefs that are being filed in court. He has implicated Pence repeatedly in participation in all of this. He is making the assumption, as we discussed yesterday, that if Pence is impeached first, then he won't be impeached because the GOP won't want President Pelosi. That is not looking like it's a very safe bet as of this morning. So there is some just wild developments right now about all of this. All right. Last thing I want to say today, we have the president showing up in Minneapolis for this rally very shortly. There's already been pre-speakers who are like incredibly racist up on the stage with him. There's been a dispute already with the mayor of Minneapolis who asked for prepayment of expenses and then backed off from that because, by the way, you know, Trump has not been paying his bills for all of these local Nuremberg rallies he's been running. We have ongoing developments on the Hill. So, you know, Yom Kippur was yesterday. The committees are back at work today. There was news this morning that Schiff's office is very, very busy as of today. And how this all breaks between now and tomorrow is anybody's guess. So we have a lot more to keep pushing forward on. Let me just say this as well. I have some news from inside the Hills. Again, this is my source that we've talked about. That, you know, ongoing pressure is really needed again on those Republican moderates. So I have more stuff to discuss on that I'm going to save to tomorrow because the broadcast is already getting kind of long. But let me just say this. There have been lists now put up on the Patreon page in the comment section from yesterday's broadcast of the moderate senators to call with phone numbers. Please do that. Okay. We need to keep putting pressure on everyone to move in favor of impeaching the president. And, you know, like you can add to your list of scripts today the fact that there's now been 2 more indictments of people who had dinner with the president at the White House who were implicated in the Ukraine scandal for campaign finance violations on a pro-Trump super PAC. Rudy Giuliani's guys. Oh, there was one other thing I should mention about Rudy, by the way. In that famous Comic Sans letter where he identified these 2 guys as his clients and said that they would not be producing documents and the like, let me just say this. The other thing you should all remember here, of course, is the crime fraud exception to attorney-client privilege. Because this whole issue of whether or not Rudy, you know, will be called to testify, this whole offer from Lindsey Graham, he said, oh, that's an interesting offer. Let me consider the privilege issues related to that. Reminder, there's no privilege that exists between an attorney and their client if they're engaged in a criminal act together. So Rudy's work with these two dudes vitiates, if he's involved in it, the attorney-client privilege. And that means any conversations that he's had with these guys related to the crimes that they've been engaged in, potentially on behalf of the president, are no longer subject to the attorney-client privilege. It's a really interesting day. It's a really interesting day today. All right, that's it for today. Please make your phone calls. It feels already like it's going to be a very rowdy day here. No surprises on that front at all. And I will, of course, be like tweeting and commenting when I can. I have a really busy day for work today. But, you know, one final reminder to all of you. Rise, the 7th run of Rise is now open for registration. Starting on the 11th of November, we're going to run it for 10 weeks, 2 weeks off for the holidays. For those of you who are really invested in trying to find ways to make a difference heading into 2020, particularly for the election, highly recommend that you join us. There's 2 tiers. There's pricing plans. And there's also scholarships available. So GaiaLeadershipProject.com/rise. Please go check it out. Scholarship application period ends on October 30th. And class is all virtual, so you can take it from anywhere. We've graduated more than 625 people from this program. We'd love to see as many of you as possible in it. All right. Much love. I will talk to all of you tomorrow. Bye.